This conference will now be recorded.
Good. Now we're going to be recorded, and we have a quorum. Is there any public comment?
No, we've received no requests for public comment.
All right. Have any presentations? None.
We do not.
Okay. Action calendar. Item 5A.
Yes, we do have one. We do have one item on the action calendar, and this pertains to the leadership structure for the Greater Los Angeles County region for the regional water management planning and implementation that we're being part of, and we need to. We're proposing here that we authorize the general manager to enter into an MOU to renew that arrangement. Oh, there's EJ. EJ, if you would please just explain this leadership, the Greater Los Angeles County Regional Urban Leadership Committee, and what we're doing. Thank you.
Will do. Thank you very much, Patrick. Good afternoon, members of the committee and board. I'll just do a brief overview and then I'll hand it over to our newest staff member, Tammy Hurley-High, to walk you through this board memo. I want to just provide a brief overview because I know that in the past, this board has taken several actions when it comes to the Greater LA County Integrated Regional Water Management. And it is a bit confusing. So let me first begin by saying thank you very much for your patience as we walk through these items. West Basin Municipal Water District has been a leader within the Greater LA County, the GLAC, if you will, Integrated Regional Water Management, which is a water planning organization throughout the greater portion of LA County. West Basin Municipal Water District serves as the chair of the South Bay subcommittee and also serves on the leadership committee. Our newest staff member, Tammy, as I mentioned, has joined our staff and is really taking the reins as far as our efforts when it comes to this. She's obviously very experienced when it comes to these matters from the perspective of Central Basin Municipal Water District, where she used to work. But as you will recall, West Basin Municipal Water District, since the organization of the GLAC, has served as an administrative role throughout this process. And in that role, we have managed the contracts on behalf of the region, as well as some of the administrative portions of the grant submittals. And in doing that, we obviously bill any sort of organization or entity that submits a proposal or project to be incorporated within the Greater LA County grant applications. So I do know that that is a little bit of an odd role. The reason for this historically is that West Basin Municipal Water District was very active as far as the workings of the GLAC. And then, of course, with the help and assistance of the board of directors here, it's a little bit easier for West Basin Municipal Water District to serve as the fiduciary and as the administrator of the GLAC. So with that, I'm going to hand this over to Tammy to talk a little bit about the memorandum of understanding within the GLAC leadership and, again, our role within that organization. Thank you.
All right, thank you, EJ. Good afternoon, members of the board. Yeah, as EJ had mentioned, this information is being provided regarding the Greater Los Angeles Integrated Regional Water Management and consideration to execute a memorandum of understanding for the leadership committee. And as EJ has provided a great background on this organization, and the MOU basically establishes the leadership committee as the regional water management group for the Los Angeles region. So West Basin has been a member for several years, and the MOU just recently expired on December 2020. And the MOU formally establishes the governance structure as the leadership committee to coordinate and share water resources management planning and other information for grant-funded program and IRWIM implementation. West Basin has served as the chair of South Santa Monica Bay subregion for more than a decade and represents this region with a seat at the leadership committee. And the makeup of the leadership committee is shown on page 2 of this report. The leadership committee is currently chaired by the Los Angeles County Flood Control District. And it includes the chairs and vice chairs of each of the 5 sub-region steering committees. Also included are the representatives from 5 water management areas that include groundwater, open space, sanitation, stormwater, and surface water. So in total, the leadership committee consists of 16 members. The chairs and vice chairs of each sub-region steering committee are comprised of 10 members. And also each of the 5 broad water management areas has representation on the committee. The 16th member is the Los Angeles County Flood Control District, which acts as the chair. So the program manager for the overall URWIP planning effort is the Los Angeles County Flood Control District as the recipient of grant-funded programs. And West Basin currently serves as administrator for the Greater LA URWIP grants and programs, as EJ had described earlier. So West Basin has continued to be actively engaged in URWIP activities that include chairing the South Bay subregion and as the contract administrator on behalf of the region. So before stating the recommendation, are there any questions from the committee?
No questions. Thank you.
All right. So the recommended motion is that the board authorize the general manager to execute the memorandum of understanding as a leadership committee member, along with 15 members of the Greater Los Angeles County Integrated Regional Water Management Group. Thank you.
Thank you.
Director Deere.
Yes.
This is Director Gray. Here. Thank you very much. I'm here.
Welcome. You're in charge.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry I'm late. Thank you, Director Deere, for starting it. We're on the action item. Is that where we are?
Yes, 5A.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for the presentation. And so I guess the next step would be, do we have anyone who would like to ask questions? Any board members? All right, this is a committee meeting, so Director Deere, is it okay to move this forward did we read the recommendation, staff?
Yes.
Okay. Director Deere, is it okay to move it forward with the recommendation?
Yes.
All right. All right, thank you very much for the presentation. We'll move it forward with the recommendation based on the staff recommendation. All right, we'll go to item 6, information calendar, item A. Mr. General Manager.
Yes. Thank you, Director Gray. Yeah, this item is actually in some way related to the item we just moved in 5A. So the integrated, excuse me, I clear my throat. The Integrated Regional Water Management has a program under Task 4 called the Disadvantaged Community Involvement Program. And we, as part of our administrative role, when these tasks have to be performed, West Basin has the role of issuing an RFP and processing those proposals and reviewing them and scoring them and bringing the consultant on board to do the task. So we have, where did Tammy go? Tammy, if you're still there, please continue to cover this item. Thank you, Tammy.
Great, thank you, Patrick. So good afternoon again, directors. So this information is related to current activities within the URWIP Disadvantaged Community Incentive Program. So the Greater Los Angeles URWIP Disadvantaged Community Involvement Program, also referred to as a DACIP, the task force is currently preparing a scope of work for implementation phase of the final task order 4. So West Basin's role in this effort will be to issue solicitations through the district standard procurement process and accept proposals that will be reviewed and scored by a panel consisting of parties from the URWIP regions. So in the coming weeks, staff will distribute a request for proposals to the existing prime consultant to perform work through implementation of Task 4. So for a little background, the DACIP was established by the California Department of Water Resources with funding designated to IRWIMP regions throughout the state. The Los Angeles Ventura region has been allocated funding from DWR to implement the DACIP to further engage disadvantaged communities with the IRWIMP planning efforts. So representatives of the DACIP task force include the Greater Los Angeles County.
Terry, Alex.
So they include the Greater Los Angeles County region, the Watershed Coalition of Ventura County, and the Upper Santa Clara River region. So there are 2 approved prime consultants, which are Tree People and California State University San Bernardino, who perform tasks related to the DACIP. So in the coming weeks, West Basin staff is planning to distribute an RFP to the 2 prime consultants. And since the work to be performed is not directly for West Basin, but rather for the Los Angeles Ventura regions, staff will proceed with solicitations as listed in this memo that include solicitation to on-call consultants. Members of the IRWIMP Leadership Committee will evaluate the proposals. The recommended award will be announced and posted on the Greater Los Angeles County website, which is dedicated to this program. Comments will be accepted by the LA County Flood Control District, and responses will be made after discussion by the review panel. A justification of award will be presented to the general manager, and then once signed, the recommended on-call consultant will be notified of the approved task order. So the Los Angeles County Flood Control District is the agency responsible for executing the Disadvantaged Community Incentive Program on behalf of these regions, and West Basin as a contracting agent for use of its on-call consultant to implement the program. The Flood Control District will provide contract management support to administer and manage the consultants. And the overall intent of the DACIP program is to encourage collaborative work involving disadvantaged communities and stakeholders in order to provide access and opportunity for IRWIMP participation by identifying water management needs and developing strategies to address those needs. So to accomplish this, Los Angeles and Ventura counties have been active to engage disadvantaged communities who are interested in collaborating on the water needs in their communities. And for more information on this DACIP implementation program, a link is provided in this memo under a Water Talks website. So that concludes this update, and I would be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Director Gray?
I'm here. I couldn't find my mouse to unmute myself. Okay, thank you. All right, are there any questions? Anyone? Made another excellent presentation, no questions. Okay, can we go to the next item, please?
Yeah, thank you for those 2 reports, Tammy. And our next item is on the information calendar. It's item 6B, which is our standard legislative update. We have EJ back with his West Basin shirt on, West Basin logo. Good to see that. EJ, take it away, please.
Yes, thank you again, Patrick. Let me begin right here on packet page 54 with the NPA update. I'm going to walk you through a handful of items, but feel free to jump in with any questions and we can slow it down and discuss these items in a little bit more detail. The entry paragraphs kind of outline where we are within the legislative session. We know that we're just past the bill introduction deadline of February 19th, but really what transpires in the days after that is there is a 30-day stall process. as far as amending legislation. And that allows everybody to kind of review all of the bills and really take a look at what's out there. One thing worth noting there in the second paragraph is that in the California State Senate, they have waived that 30-day rule. And that has created a little bit of a chaotic sense as far as some of these bills that we're just trying to wrap our mind around are already in the process now of being amended, even prior to being set for a committee hearing. While it's not a problem, NPA does a great job of representing West Basin. And then, of course, West Basin staff is very engaged in several different stakeholder work groups to kind of help mold these bills as they move through the legislature. It does provide kind of a little bit of a hit and miss, because we may be working on a specific aspect of a bill only to find out that it's already been amended or in the process of being amended. So I just want to highlight that, because you'll see that as we walk through some of these bills. Obviously, water debt is something very crucial. I'll talk a little bit about this on the federal side. We do know that there is an increase and growing amount of debt when it comes to utilities. You see that the State Water Resources Control Board has estimated that there is between $600 and $700 million drinking water related debt. And that, of course, doesn't even include the additional debt that is created through wastewater fees. There are two bills working to handle these things. We've heard a little bit about them in the past, Senate Bill 222 and Senate Bill 223 by Senator Dodd, one of which would basically provide assistance to low-income ratepayers. And of course, the other is a continuation of the moratorium on shutoffs when it comes to retail connections. West Basin staff has been working with a handful of different organizations when it comes to this. Obviously, California Municipal Utilities Association, CMUA, is really taking a leading effort on that. California Special Districts Association has also been providing assistance. And then, of course, the Association of California Water Agencies. When it comes to these two bills, I think I've mentioned this before, there is this kind of initial reaction from the industry that has led some to take an opposed position or oppose unless amended. But what we're really starting to see is that the industry as a whole is trying to take a more relaxed approach, understanding that these are very specific issues. So a watch, and even in some cases, a watch and seek amendments has been kind of the earliest effort, because they do specifically impact the retail community. So West Basin Municipal Water District has done a decent job, I think, of reaching out to our individual retailers. We've discussed it not only at the West Basin Water Association, but also in our individual meetings when it comes to the Urban Water Management Plan. So we're really trying to keep an eye on this, because there are a lot of different opportunities for relief. Most of you all know that Metropolitan Water District has actually provided relief to its member agencies that would allow for a corresponding delay in payment, of course, if they're drastically impacted by non-payment at the retail level. West Basin could easily pass that on to our individual retailers. So we're going to continue to track that. And obviously, as I mentioned, I'll be discussing some of these issues again during our federal affairs update. Very quickly, we've talked about the recall efforts, and I know the directors had asked West Basin staff to closely track this. Obviously, you do see that San Diego Mayor Kevin Faulconer, as well as John Cox, are two front runners as far as already putting their name out there, potentially running. You have seen kind of more of a response, I think, from Governor Newsom as far as who's behind this effort and where they sit. It's very different, I think, than if you look at the most recent recall effort, of course, with former Governor Gray Davis. You are really starting to see Democrats rally behind the current governor. And so we're going to continue to track this, but I think that it really has, this effort has really led to a very outward approach as far as how Governor Newsom handles certain issues, and none of which I think is more important than the vaccine rollout. And you can see there on the top of packet page 55, Governor Newsom has really been proactive, not just with communication, but of course, being front and center when they talk about the rollout. About 40% of all vaccines are dedicated to certain communities that have been most hard hit. Of course, disadvantaged communities is a big part of that. You're starting to see that the idea about getting the vaccine out there and the push to get everybody eligible is a big part of that. And of course, I know our directors have asked about water and wastewater being an essential service, and we are on the cusp of being eligible if you fit within that category. But Governor Newsom has talked consistently about really moving through that priority list in order to allow that all Californians be eligible, I think by April/May. So we're going to continue to track that, but I wanted to just to provide a little bit of the background there. When it comes to our priority legislation, you can kind of see that we really only have 3 bills listed, but I want to talk about a few others as well. But I think that there's no other bill that's been more of a priority for West Basin staff than Assembly Bill 1195 by Assemblywoman Garcia. And just so you know, to kind of provide a little bit of background, I know that our General Manager, Patrick Shields, has done an excellent job of really reaching out to the stakeholders in Sacramento, primarily being the Assemblywoman's office, as well as the Speaker of the California State Assembly, who's really taken a very proactive approach to this. West Basin staff has been working with NPA as far as doing additional outreach. We've conducted a lot of meetings with other regional stakeholders, including Upper District and the Water Replenishment District, to talk a little bit about where they are. It's my understanding that the Water Replenishment District is in an opposed position, but Upper District is now considering or contemplating a position as well. In my most recent conversation with the Assemblywoman staff, as well as the Speaker's staff, we walked through the UCLA study related to the human rights to water in poor communities of color. And we walked through all of the different issues that were outlined there, as well as the recommendations. It was very clear as part of that conversation that the communities that are most negatively impacted by the issues within that study are not within the West Basin Municipal Water District service area, nor are they overlapping or overlying the West Coast groundwater basin. As such, West Basin highlighted several different things that West Basin is currently doing to outreach to our communities, work with our individual retailers, but also working within the disadvantaged communities as a whole when it comes to LA County. And I know that Tammy just provided a little bit of an overview of the DACIP, the Disadvantaged Community Involvement Program. And so the Speaker's staff was actually very impressed with our efforts when it comes to all of these different issues, as well as West Basin's kind of ongoing history of assisting our retailers. There are several different examples of providing assistance when water quality issues arise, including the city of Lomita, as well as Golden State Water Company. And so we have requested that they look to amend the jurisdiction within that legislation to focus in on what the Speaker's staff, who of course is providing technical assistance, has stated is the primary purpose of that legislation, which is more southeast LA County and overlapping the central groundwater basin. Now, we did put that request in an email from NPA. It's my understanding that the Speaker, as well as Assemblywoman Garcia, are receiving several similar requests. So we haven't received specific confirmation about the amendments to that bill, but it is our understanding that they were very complimentary of what West Basin's efforts have been when it comes to the issues outlined in the study. They do understand that those issues really don't pertain to the West Coast Basin, and it is my understanding that they are considering it and considering it very favorably as far as amending the jurisdiction. I don't know if anybody has any specific questions about that. I know that there's a lot to unpack there, but I'm happy to answer any questions when it comes to that bill specifically.
Are there any questions? EJ, I do have a question just to make sure I understand. Right now, the current jurisdiction does not include disadvantaged communities in our area. Is that right? Service area, correct?
No, As outlined in the bill, the jurisdiction of the agency that would be created by the bill includes the entire water replenishment district service area, which includes the West Coast groundwater basin as well as the central groundwater basin.
Okay.
The issues that the bill seeks to address are not within the West Coast basin.
And so the amendment we're asking them to consider would exclude our service area completely, so there's no interest in what we do because they feel that we're doing what we should do at the moment, right?
Correct. They would refocus the bill. You can see that right now it's called the Southern Los Angeles County Regional Water Agency. It's possible that they would rename that to be the Southeast Los Angeles County Regional Water Agency and focus their efforts on the central groundwater basin.
Right. Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions, board members? Director Houston? Director
No,
Deere?
no, I'm good. Thank you.
Is Director Alvarez on the call?
No, he is not.
Thank you, EJ, go on.
So the next bill we have is Senate Bill 222, again, the Water Affordability Assistance Program. This bill obviously is seeking to provide assistance to retailers ultimately, but also the ratepayers themselves. The real issue here is how this would be funded. There are, and you can see that highlighted at the very bottom there, although a funding source has not yet been identified. The real concern here is whether the author would be considering a quote unquote water tax or an additional fee on water connections. Again, there has been historically a great deal of opposition when it comes to those types of fees or quote unquote taxes. And of course, the water industry as a whole has some concerns. So it's really looking about how you would go ahead and fund this. The next bill is Senate Bill 323 by Senator Caballero. This is related to local government, water or sewer service, and legal actions. And again, I know that we've received some questions about this in the past. So West Basin staff has really been working on it. The bill has been sponsored by the Association of California Water Agencies as well as Irvine Ranch Water District. As drafted, the bill would not impact West Basin Municipal Water District because it simply relates to retail water service as well as sewer service. However, West Basin has been in contact with those sponsors, and they have received some requests in relation to the wholesale level. So West Basin staff is going to continue to work with them to track the language and really see where we go from there. If we could turn to packet page 56. I want to run through just a few additional bills. Senate Bill 45, and you can see just beneath that Assembly Bill 1500 are the two quote unquote water bonds of this legislative session. You can see the Wildfire Prevention, Safe Drinking Water, Drought Preparation and Flood Protection Bond Act of 2022. This is identical to the legislation that was introduced last year by Senator Ben Allen and was later amended. You can see there it's about $5.5 billion. Does provide additional funds for water recycling. West Basin Municipal Water District will be asking our delegation to increase funding for water recycling and desal projects. This is in line with West Basin's current position on the previous bill, which was a support and seek amendments. We will be bringing this bill specifically back because the bill is right now in the process of being amended. So we wanted to wait and see where that lies. You can see that just beneath that, Assembly Bill 1500 is slightly bigger at $6.7 billion. It is obviously a piece to negotiate with the Senate bill, so you can see these bills moving forward. And I think the most up-to-date information that I wanted to provide here today is that we've talked a little bit about a bond potentially being on the November ballot of 2022 as the most likely scenario. And as such, it seemed like there was a great deal of time to help negotiate the contents of these two bills. It's now my understanding that there's a potential that one of these bills could actually move forward a little bit quicker. They would like to see something potentially pass in this legislative session. That's not to say that it can't spill over into a special session or next year. But it just brings to light that we need to pay extra special attention when it comes to these matters. Again, West Basin staff would recommend ultimately a similar position as on Senate Bill 45. So you'd be looking at potentially a support and seek amendments. And I wanted to highlight some of our work with our stakeholder groups because, you know, last year when West Basin brought this before you, we had done, I thought, an excellent job of working with Cal DSAL and the Water Reuse California to really push them and pressure them to put in a more significant request when it comes to funding. At that time, I think Water Reuse was looking at $500 million. And I'm very pleased to note that this year, both Cal DSAL as well as Water Reuse California have actually increased their request and are now seeking $1.5 billion for water recycling as well as desalination projects. So West Basin staff, obviously, in working with those stakeholders, we want to be in line with that approach. And that would be the amendment that West Basin would be seeking. And again, I do expect these bills to be amended in the next week or so. And so that'll provide a little bit more information as to where we are in order to bring it back for a potential position when it comes to these two bills. If we can turn the page to packet page 59. I just want to highlight some of these other bills within our tracking sheet. You can see towards the bottom of that page, Assembly Bill 361 by Assemblymember Rivas. This is related to open meetings, local agencies, and teleconferences. This bill is sponsored currently by the California Special Districts Association. West Basin staff is working with not just the author, but also the stakeholder groups. But I wanted to highlight an additional bill, and I've asked Neomel Pappas and Associates to add this to our tracking sheet. I wanted to add Assembly Bill 703 by Assemblywoman Blanca Rubio. And the reason I wanted to highlight this is that it is a competing measure because it does go a little bit further than the Special Districts Association bill. I do anticipate that not both of the bills will not ultimately pass. At some point, they'll merge the two bills or compromise as to where they are. But it looks like the Assembly Bill 703 provides a little bit more flexibility to special districts as far as moving to teleconferencing if and when necessary. This bill is sponsored by Three Valleys Municipal Water District. And so staff hopes to bring both of these bills back next month once we know a little bit more about the activity and the competing nature of those two bills. So I wanted to highlight that for you as well. If we can now turn to page Assembly Bill packet page 62. And again, I wanted to highlight Assembly Bill 818 by Assemblymember Richard Bloom. This bill is related to those pre-moistened non-woven disposable wipes and the manufacturing and sale of those within the state of California. Obviously, for those of you who have had an opportunity to tour and see the Hyperion facilities, you can see and discuss with them the issues that these non-flushable wipes do create. So obviously, Assemblymember Bloom has been really working with the manufacturers associations on this legislation. The bill has been previously introduced and has moved through the legislature to some degree, but typically meets very heavy opposition. So West Basin staff has been working with Assemblymember Bloom's office on this legislation to make sure that it's okay. And obviously, we want to work with our City of Los Angeles and LA County wastewater associations and groups to see where they are on that legislation. You can see just beneath that Assembly Bill 963 by Assemblywoman Kamlager. We did mention this at our most recent special board meeting. It is my understanding that amendments have been drafted and staff is in the process now of seeking those amendments. Once we have those amendments, we would bring that back to this committee or board at the earliest convenience. So I just wanted you to know that we're continuing to track that. And then I think if you turn to packet page 66, again, I just wanted to highlight, I know I've already mentioned it briefly, but Senate Bill 222 and Senate Bill 223. Again, West Basin staff has continued to work on these matters. My understanding is that amendments have been prepared, and so we would be seeking those amendments at the most earliest convenience. And I think that highlights the state issues. Some of them, as I mentioned, have some crossover to our federal update. And so I'm happy to answer any specific questions about the state. And if there are no questions, I would just move forward with the federal.
All right, are there any questions for the state issues? All right, EJ, I don't hear anyone, so can you continue on with the next subject matter?
Yes. So moving on to our Vance Foyak and Associates presentation, you can see that at packet page 70. I'm going to walk you through a couple of issues and probably throw some numbers at you real quick. But obviously, I think what everybody's been talking about is the COVID-19 relief package. There you have it. The House of Representatives passed the American Rescue Plan Act, the $1.9 trillion COVID relief package, by a vote of 219 to 212. You can see that party line vote. At the time of this report, we didn't really have confirmation about where the Senate would be going, but obviously now we can confirm that the Senate did move forward with their package. Does include those $1,400 stimulus checks, so we're excited for our residents that will benefit from that. And I'm going to walk you through a handful of different provisions within that relief package that now has been signed by President Biden. So as I mentioned, when we talk about Senate Bill 222, the low income rate payer assistance, the legislation does retain $500 million for low income rate payer assistance programs, which was included in the House side. So you have it in both the House and the Senate. And I wanted to highlight this because the intent now is to divvy that money up to the different states and provide assistance programs. California is very progressive when it comes to this issue, and they have, again, Senate Bill 222, and the State Water Resources Control Board is going to ultimately be the agency that helps to disperse these funds to provide assistance. And I wanted to highlight that because within the West Basin Municipal Water District service area, we do have both municipal retailers as well as our investor-owned utilities. And it's come to our attention that Golden State Water Company is now in the process of kind of reviewing this legislation and did have questions or concerns related to whether municipal utilities would be the focus of this effort or whether investor-owned utilities would also be eligible for relief. And they have provided West Basin Municipal Water District with a letter of support that they would be sending, specifically requesting that the assistance be fairly dispersed between both municipal and investor-owned utilities. And it's important to note that within the West Basin Municipal Water District service area, we do have both. The majority of our service area is actually served by investor-owned utilities. So the balance of that really does require, I think, fairness when it comes to these issues. West Basin staff will be kind of tracking this issue to see where their pressure points are as far as any sort of policy decisions. And obviously, the request would be for a letter of support from the general manager on the matter. So we can bring that back to you if there are any specific decision-making that would require that letter, or if we wanted to go with a more broader approach to just support the fairness within the West Basin Municipal Water District service area. You can also see below there the emergency rental assistance water utility payments are eligible. There's approximately $21.5 billion for the assistance program, and that, of course, would be eligible for utility payments. And then the special districts issue, I wanted to highlight this because I know Director Houston had been asking about this when it came to the Special Districts Association. And I wanted to point out, we've talked a little bit about it before, whether states and counties and even municipal governments would support special districts eligibility. And at the time, we talked about how, state government is very different between the 50 different states. Special districts really only impact about 10 states. I think we discussed them with VSA when we talked about California, Washington, Texas, Florida, New York, Massachusetts kind of being some of the bigger states. But ultimately, special districts were not allowed. However, there is provisions within the bill that allow states to administer and provide funds to special districts. And with that, I wanted to highlight just some of the funding that was included within this package. The state of California as a whole received $42.6 billion when it comes to the stimulus package. And obviously, you're talking about $1.9 trillion. 42.6 is a significant amount. And I was able to kind of make my way through the legislation and try to identify and isolate the funds. And I actually do have a spreadsheet that was provided to us by VSA if it would help the board. It's a very dense information, but LA County received about $7.66 billion. And several of our individual cities received funds, including the city of Carson, which received $20.04 million. The city of Gardena, $15.7 million. The city of Hawthorne, $32.69 million. The city of Inglewood, $35.07 million. And Redondo Beach at $7.14. Then, of course, there are some additional funds that are available for specific programs in some of our other states. So that's broken down into smaller levels. But I would say that overall, in looking at the breakdown of the $1.9 trillion, I think that not only LA County, but the state of California did extremely well. So I want to highlight just a few additional items. We talked a little bit about this before, and this is on packet page 71. Representative Napolitano and her Water Recycling Act. We are working with her office now on that legislation to see exactly where it goes. But I'm very excited to kind of highlight the item below that, because I think everybody's been very familiar with West Basin's approach to seeking federal funding. And several years ago, Republicans in the House and the Senate put a moratorium on earmarks. And in doing that, that really limited West Basin's approach to finding funding. And so when working with Hal Furman and the Furman Group, and then ultimately VSA, we were able to work with our congressional delegation on finding what we would call an end around. So what we would do is we'd work with our federal agencies, including the Bureau of Reclamation, as well as the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, to go through a competitive grant program where they would be supplying members of Congress their funding recommendations. And then, of course, those recommendations through a work plan would be approved by members of Congress and then ultimately signed by President Biden. And I wanted to highlight this because there is a decent chance that what was earlier called earmarks could potentially come back and provide funding for specific programs. And I think that the easiest way to highlight this is to talk about community project funds. That's a unique and creative way of talking about earmarks. We talked about member director funds or directive funds in the past, but the community project funds seems to be the term of the year. And it does look like, obviously, in the House of Representatives, they're going to move forward with this opportunity to direct funds for specific programs and projects. We are now in kind of a waiting pattern as the Senate contemplates this. And of course, we do know that Republican leadership does have specific concerns. We do know the vote margin there in the Senate is 50-50 right now, and there is a tiebreaker. But obviously, there are several more conservative Democrats that want to have this balance out. And so the term earmark obviously is something that is very narrowing as far as how members bring projects home. And so we just wanted to highlight this because West Basin under the current format could do extremely well. The idea would be to split money within members of the Senate and members of the House of Representatives. Each representative would have the opportunity to bring in 10 potential projects within their congressional districts. West Basin has been long working with a couple of our members on specific projects, and those would be in Representative Barragon's district with the Mills Park project, as well as Congresswoman Maxine Waters on the North Gardena lateral. And so this is just an alternative opportunity for West Basin to continue to find funding. We would continue in our current approach with working with the U.S. Army Corps to bring things through their annual work plan. So that would not stop. But again, this would just be an additional alternative when it comes to that. Are there any questions about that on the earmark issue? We'll be providing an additional update as soon as possible, as soon as we hear where the Senate comes down on that.
All right, are there any questions? No, EJ, I think not.
Hearing none. The only other item I was going to highlight was that just very recently, Governor Newsom had mentioned kind of his contemplation about the previous California Senate position and the appointment process, and did note that he has begun the process of looking at or vetting who would potentially be appointed if there was a opening in the California Senate seats. And of course, that would reflect or lead to whether Senator Feinstein would be fulfilling the end of her term. And I just wanted to highlight that because there was a discussion in a press release. Of course, Senator Feinstein has commented that she does anticipate fulfilling her full Senate seat term, which would, of course, conclude at the very earliest part of 2025. So her seat actually runs through 2024, but I think the swearing in would take place on January 3rd of that new senator. Now, she did not disclose whether she anticipated running for re-election, but did again point out that she does anticipate fulfilling her full term. So I wanted to highlight that because, again, once things kind of come out and the governor states that he's anticipating or looking at potentially appointing somebody, there are a lot of questions as to who potentially could fulfill that seat. So I want to leave it there. Chairwoman Gray, if you have any questions, I am happy to answer anything.
Thank you, EJ. Are there any questions?
No, thank you.
All right. Don? No? Okay. EJ, I think not. You gave an excellent report. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Shells, the next item, please.
Yeah, and I just want to thank EJ for those excellent reports, because we sometimes forget the great deal of information that EJ brings to our attention and the great amount of detail. So thank you for that, EJ. So our next item on the information calendar is the Metropolitan Water District update. So I will hand that over to Tammy again to get us up to speed on what's going on at Metropolitan. Tammy.
Thank you, Patrick. So good afternoon again, directors. This memo will include a summary of Metropolitan activities. And in addition to the board and committee reports, this memo also includes a summary on a couple of other programs that are relevant to West Basin. And finally, we will conclude with a summary of the water supply conditions. So with respect to the Bay Delta, DWR is developing an environmental impact report under the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA. Current work is focused on formulation of alternative to be analyzed, descriptions of existing conditions, and then development of method to analyze potential impacts on environmental resources. The draft EIR is anticipated to be released in mid-2022 for public review. DWR will provide regular updates for a better understanding of the proposed project, and will also continue their video series titled Delta Conveyance Deep Dive. And a link to the video series is provided in this memo on page 75. And then next, regarding the rate refinement, with regards to this particular process, Metropolitan staff and member agencies have been participating in working group meetings with the goal to define a recovery of demand management cost. Metropolitan's rates and charges do not include a water stewardship rate for fiscal year 2020 and 2021, and then 2021, 2022. The current rate structure was approved by the board to include the prior year and balance of the Water Stewardship Fund. That was back in December of 2019. So they approved that to cover the demand management cost for the coming 2 years. And at that time, the board directed staff to further review alternatives within the rate structure through the rate refinement process. So this year, Metropolitan has established a member agency work group to help provide technical feedback on rate review for their staff to bring back to the board for further discussion and feedback. And the rate refinement process will include reviewing the history of Metropolitan's revenue structure and develop a method to recover demand management cost. And this includes a review of the rate rebundling, refinement to the readiness to serve and capacity charges, the surplus year storage incentives, purchase order commitments, and availability of the service charge. So in addition to Metropolitan committee meetings that they're conducting every month, work group meetings are with member agencies to build alignment and analyze refinements. And West Basin staff and general manager have been actively participating in these work group meetings to provide input. And recently, Metropolitan provided rate refinement items for member agencies to review and provide technical feedback on guiding principles for the rate structure. And West Basin has collaborated with several other member agencies in drafting this list of guiding principles for the board to discuss and provide feedback to the Metropolitan staff. So Metropolitan will continue these discussions with a work group to finalize principles and refine demand management cost recovery. The Finance Committee will continue to receive updates, and a comprehensive summary from this process is planned for June 2021. And there is one additional item that I would like to mention. It's just a brief update on the IRP. So on Tuesday, March 23rd, Metropolitan will have a workshop with board and member agencies centered around the IRP with a focus on the demand management and climate change. So as Metropolitan continues to develop the 2020 Integrated Water Resources Plan, they have been working with a panel of experts. And the workshop will consist of a brief presentation summarizing expert feedback so far and the opportunities for experts to provide further comment and answer any questions. So again, that date is March 23rd, and it will be from 8:30 in the morning to 11:30. And before I continue, if Chairwoman Gray might have anything to add, I can divert to her.
Well, you've done a great job explaining it, and I don't know if anyone has any questions. I see Director Houston, did you have a question?
Sure. A couple questions. Number one, can staff send us a link to that IRP meeting if possible? I don't know if I can make it or not, but I'd like to have a link.
Yeah, we'll send the link.
Okay, and then on the report you just gave on the rate refinement process, Tammy, it says in here that West Basin collaborated with several member agencies in drafting a list of principles for the work group to review and further discuss. So have those already been submitted to this work group?
Yes, so this was just the start off of the initial phase, and they have been submitted to the work group, and they're continuing refinements on this. They're taking in all of the input from all agencies. So we collaborated with some. LADWP had provided their own list of examples, and then San Diego provided their list. So they're putting together a crosswalk of merging all of this information together.
Okay, is there a way that staff could send our board the list of the priorities we submitted? please?
Yes. Yeah, we can do that, absolutely. And then we can also send you an update as far as where they're at this process, and merging all the information.
Yeah, that would be good that the board knows what the list of priorities were that came from our agency, because I didn't see it. And also you mentioned those 2 other agencies. So if you could send those out as well, I'd like to see what some of the other agencies are saying are their priorities.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Great. And I think that's it for the moment. Thank you, Tammy.
Thank you.
Okay. Tammy?
Thank you. So with respect to the board action items included in attachment A, which is on page 78 of this packet, is a list of items heard and acted on the Metropolitan Committees and Board in February. And then also a list of items for March in its draft form from the meeting that they had last week. That is also included as attachment B, just for your information. And then moving on to Metropolitan Community Partnering Program. Metropolitan's program for community partnering is currently under review. And as a result, they are not accepting applications at this time. So we will keep you updated on this program as more information becomes available. All right, and then moving on to the water supply update. There are graphics showing water supply conditions through the end of February. They're under page 82 as attachment C. And then additionally, a brief summary is included for the 2 main watershed supply areas for Metropolitan. So for Northern California supplies, DWR has reported continued dry conditions across the state. State water project allocations for the contracting agencies are still at 10%. And the final allocations are typically announced in May after the assessment of the condition following the wet season. With respect to the Colorado River supplies, the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation has reported that the 6-month period from April to December 2020 was one of the driest periods on record. And a recent study is projecting a possibility of Lake Mead's elevation to fall below the shortage trigger level by the end of this calendar year. So what that means is if a shortage is declared, it would initially have impacts on Arizona and Nevada. And then if the elevations at the lake continue to further decline, Metropolitan would then comply with the drought contingency plan by making contributions into Lake Mead's supply. And that would mean that Metropolitan would utilize supplies from their intentionally created surplus program, also known as ICS. So with respect to attachment C on the graphic, that Metropolitan does a great job of keeping updated every month. So this is just a brief summary of highlights. In the middle blue shaded area, you can see the highlights for the precipitation and the snowpack for both California and then Colorado. And then the graphics at the bottom are just showing the Diamond Valley Lakes emergency storage supply and Metropolitan storage reserve levels. And Metropolitan Storage Reserve reflects the success rate of managing supplies within the calendar year with a record year-end balance of 3.2 million acre-feet of supply. So to the left is a graphic of the Colorado River Basin conditions with 87% of the snow water equivalent. And to the right shows the conditions along the State Water Project, and the statewide average of the snow water equivalent is 65%. And then finally, on the second page, it shows additional graphics for both the State Water Project and Colorado River supplies. So that concludes my report on this information for Metropolitan, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Director Gray?
Are there any questions?
I do have just an observation in this report. There's nothing at all mentioning anything about all the issues at Metropolitan with the employee concerns. So I don't know if that's something that, should be included in the report or not, but it's not even mentioned. So maybe we would keep something in there going forward.
What was the comment, Director? Tammy, can you hear? Let me turn this off.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, repeat your comment or question.
I was just making a comment that there was nothing in this report about the issues with employees at Metropolitan Water District. That's obviously pretty big information, but it's nowhere to be found in this write-up.
All right, is there a report regarding that or anything that staff would like to report on or regarding that, or are there any questions of the representatives?
Madam Chair, the only thing I have really to report is obviously Metropolitan Water District is undergoing a process to bring in a third-party auditor to investigate and review this. And so that process has been previously reported. But the additional aspect of this is that there are calls for a state legislative audit. The process for that would be, and has already begun, in the sense that there are members of the California State Legislature that have requested that JLAC, the Joint Legislative Audit Committee, undertake a process where they would request that the state auditor conduct an investigation. And I have reached out to Metropolitan Water District staff. A lot of times when those audit requests come through, a lot of questions are being asked about who should support and the direction that they should go through. And I would just say that in speaking with Metropolitan Water District staff, they have communicated to the Joint Legislative Audit Committee and leadership that they are not opposed to a legislative audit, that they would really have no position on it if the Joint Legislative Audit Committee wished to go through with that and assign it to the state auditor. They would not oppose, but they're going to continue to move forward with their third-party investigation. So it would be a simultaneous audit if they were to move forward with that, or they would do them and just have an agreement to cooperate with one another. But I think that is maybe something that has not gone reported, is that Metropolitan Water District is simply not going to oppose it. And a lot of times I've seen those hearings before. There's usually a couple in favor and a couple in opposition. So if the Joint Legislative Audit Committee does bring that forward, there would receive no opposition.
Okay, thank you, EJ, because I think that it probably would merit, though, a paragraph in the report. I mean, this is just my own opinion, but there's been some state legislators who obviously have called for an audit. There's a lot of moving parts going on, and I'd also not mentioned this report was, that in March, I guess the board just authorized another $200,000 to the law firm that's doing an independent investigation. So maybe that wasn't ready by the time this report was drafted. I don't know, but I do think if I was the average person out there reading this, I would not hear or see anything about that. And I think that's a very relevant thing that should be in our report. So from what I know, that you've got 3 state senators and 3 assembly members who've already called on an audit. It seems to me that would be something that would be reported to the West Basin Board. So
it will most definitely be included in, because this board memo was submitted prior to the March committee and board meetings at Metropolitan Water District, and is intended to cover kind of the previous month because of that issue. But we will make sure to include it in the what will be the overview of March.
Okay, and one other question, and we keep getting into this challenge, but these meetings now are around the 16th or 15th of the month. So theoretically, can you guys submit things, right after the board meeting has happened to at least have it more timely, or do things have to be submitted before the Metropolitan Committee and Board meetings?
It depends on kind of the month. You can imagine the committee and board meetings at Metropolitan Water District are the second Monday and Tuesday of the month. So
Right.
in the month of March, you can imagine it was March 1st was on that first Monday. And so the very next week you had the committee and board structure. If, of course, the first of the month doesn't happen until the Thursday or Friday, then you get into that ultimately what would be the third week of the month. And then, of course, it's right on top of our committee meetings. So staff tries to do the best we can as far as bringing the most up-to-date information. There are months where there's a little bit of a lag, and the March, there was plenty of time. But what we try to strive for is consistency. So obviously, staff can work with the general manager as far as presenting whatever information the committee and board would like to hear. But we're hoping to commit to consistency as far as what we're reporting on in our written report.
Okay, good. And last thing is that on our caucus meeting that we do at the beginning of the month, and I know that's like the Wednesday before the Metropolitan Committee and Board meetings, at least in the past, we used to have the board letter or board memo, like when we would have the physical meetings at the office, a lot of times there'd be some backups. That's not there anymore, but but then again, I look at the Metropolitan website and I see sometimes their stuff isn't posted till Thursday or Friday. So, I don't understand. I don't know how we can do better, I guess. I don't know how we can do better if we're going to have conversations at the caucus meeting about items that we don't have all the backups on per se, or if you guys do have something you can include, because right now we're just getting a pretty blank slate, and it might call out a couple items that are going to be talked about, but we don't have the materials, provided to us.
Director Houston, I'll work with staff as far as maybe putting together some recommendations that we could provide to the office of the general manager. But the issue that you just highlighted is actually a very unique issue, because our Metropolitan Water District caucus meeting is actually not the Wednesday before the Metropolitan Water District committee and board meeting. It's actually the first Wednesday of the month. So in a situation where the first of the month falls on that Tuesday or Wednesday, then there would be almost two weeks until the Metropolitan Water District committee and board meetings, because they have theirs on the second Monday and Tuesday. And so there are issues with that where we're actually proceeding with our caucus meeting and the complete agenda isn't even available yet. They have what's called their draft agenda. So I'm happy to work with our staff to maybe find some recommendations. We can discuss those with the office of the general manager. But you're pointing out good issues. It's just a matter of timing between when their meetings are and when our meeting is.
Okay, you're right. And that reminds me, because sometimes when the calendar's adjusted, you're right. Our caucus meeting is whenever the first Wednesday of the month. Sometimes that's, totally out of sync or what have you. And so sometimes it works in our favor and sometimes it doesn't. So thank you for that reminder, by the way, because I just recall that sometimes we have that meeting within days of the Met meetings. And then you're right, sometimes it's a week and a half. So, I don't know a better way to do it, but I think maybe in the future we should look at how we adjust our Met caucus meeting to make it more timely. Instead of just always doing it first Wednesday of the month, but that's been long-standing. So that could be a conversation for another time for the board. But anyway, I do find it really a little frustrating that we end up getting this meeting and on the first Wednesday, and yet we don't always have all the understanding of what exactly the item is or the real letter. But in the past we have, so I didn't know how that had worked. So thank you for the clarification.
All right. Did you finish, Director Houston?
I am finished. Yes, thank you.
All right, thank you. Just a few comments. Just the last one, I think you made some good points in terms of getting information that's timely to kind of react to it. So staff will come back with some recommendations. I think I heard EJ say that, and general manager, if you can come back with some recommendations to kind of address some of the concerns regarding the timeliness and our reaction to it, the information.
Yes, we will, President Gray.
Thank you for bringing that up. Thank you, Patrick. And in regards to the issue of employee workplace protection, if you will, I think it would be good to have a section as an update every month regarding that, because it is an ongoing issue. And so, Mr. General Manager, I'd like to request that that's part of the report moving forward. And just a reminder, I know last month we did, as I recall, report that Metropolitan had hired an independent consultant to look at our policies and so forth as it relates to EEO complaints. And I don't recall if the audit request had been made by the 3 legislators. I don't recall, but we will have a report update moving forward. And just to add to EJ's comments, and thank you, EJ, for kind of refreshing our memory and bringing us up to date. Just to let you know, the board know that myself and the general manager sent a letter to the Joint Legislative Assembly and Senate Committee, JLAC, indicating that if the audit committee deems it's necessary to do an audit, that we fully support that effort and we will fully cooperate. So I want to really emphasize that Metropolitan does support it. If the state audit committee deems that's necessary, we will support it, and that's important for people to know, because there has been a lot of people who signed on to supporting the audit, and we're one of them. If that's deemed necessary. So I want people to know that we're not opposing an audit, and EJ said it would be done simultaneously. We don't know that yet, but it could complement what we are doing, the independent review. I believe the Shaw Law Firm said the independent review may be finalized the end of April, I believe it is, but we are not uh, uh, we're not regimented to that date, but it could go further. We just want it to be comprehensive and thorough. So, but that's kind of a projected date from the Shaw Group, but that's not a date that's enforced or recommended to the group itself. We just want things to be thorough and comprehensive. There is a climate survey going on right now, which really has to do with the participation. The last number I heard was 1,400 employees that participated in it with the Shaw Group. And if they contact the Shaw Group directly, or the Shaw Group contacts them, they give their opinion on the environment, their experiences at Metropolitan, which is a great thing to do because it gives an opportunity to give their perspective on them working there at Metropolitan. So that will be helpful, I think, to the board after that is completed. So not only the review of our policies, programs, and practices, but also a climate survey of employees' perspective on their experiences. So all those things I think will be very helpful to the board moving forward. I've spoken before the vice chair of the state audit committee, and I think there's a meeting tomorrow with the actual chair of the audit committee. So we are very actively engaged with the legislature on these issues, as well as the city council. You may be aware there's a motion that may be heard by the city council, LA City Council this Thursday. I think it's before the rules committee today. And I am sending a letter today that will give Metropolitan's perspective on that, just to reiterate our support or the things that we're doing as these allegations are made, these issues are coming forth. So there's a lot of moving parts, board members and staff, and as much as we can keep you updated, we will. It may be verbally, because I know the report that staff gives is kind of 2 weeks behind, but certainly I'm here to answer questions and the Director Williams was on the call. I'm sure he would, but as chair of the board, I'm certainly free and open to any questions that you may have that I can provide you an update on. So with that, and I know Director Hughes, you're very much involved in engage in the issue. So again, just ask any question that you will. And Director Deere, I know it's important to you also and the other board members. So I'm here to address any issues or any questions that you may have. And again, thank you to EJ and Tammy. Gave excellent reports this morning on all the issues. So thank you very much. Director Houston, did you want to say something or have questions now? Any
Oh,
more?
no. Well, I just want to say thank you, Madam Chair, for that explanation. I think it's good that we continue to have it somehow reported in our documentation just for our agency. And what you said is very noteworthy that, over 1,400 employees apparently participated in this survey, this internal survey. So it's obviously high participation rate, which is good, but that can also be interpreted different ways. But a high participation rate of employees to that survey, and I had understood because listening to the meetings that the number keeps changing, but at least 125 or 135 employees have contacted the law firm wanting to talk with them. So it seems to me there's definitely some significant interest with the employees at Metropolitan as to what exactly has happened. So I applaud the board to look into it and get to the bottom of it and let it take as long as it needs to take.
Thank you. And in addition, you're aware as the other board members that we have a diversity, equity, and inclusion council, and certainly that is moving forward. And that does involve those issues, diversity, equity, and inclusion. So that discussion has been had by employee resource groups, and our bargaining unit. ASME has now rejoined the group, as well as the Black Employees Association. So they're fully engaged in all those issues at Metropolitan. There was one other point I was going to make. I can't remember, but that is noteworthy because there's a number of fronts that are involved at Metropolitan to really really allow opportunities for employees to engage and share their experiences and give their input and help shape policy moving forward on diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's very important too. I can't remember the other point, but that's important to note also.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Sure. Any excuse me, any other questions? Okay, Mr. General Manager, the next item.
Yeah, and we will follow up as staff. I'll take a lead role in that on all of the suggestions and requests for information and timing issues on meetings. Yeah, we have no closed session today, Director Ray.
Oh, okay, no closed session. Let me see what else is next on the agenda.
Director's comments, future agenda items.
Okay, Director's comments. Director Deere.
No comments. I'm ready to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you. Director Houston.
Thank you. No, just two comments. One, staff, thank you for the reports. Very good as always. And also, thank you for that information in the report on water debt, which of course is a big issue. And in January, that report had come out from the State Water Resources Control Board. So I think we have to keep watching that. And where we were talking about last year, so water debt, how our state will be facing that. So other than that, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you to staff for the reports this morning, excellent reports. And I wanted to make mention of thank you, Pat, because I know you're very much engaged in Sacramento on the Garcia bill, right? Christine Garcia bill. And thank you very much for being engaged and being helpful and instrumental in that potential amendment, because that's very important to us. So thank you and EJ. So with that, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much for being here.